Working sucks. You want to quit? Do it. Seriously. But before you do, watch this. Because most people quit and end up right where they started. Miserably unemployed, miserably re-employed, or miserably self-employed. Different job, same brain. And that is what nobody warns you about. Hi, I'm Marty. I studied psychology and brain science. And 7 years ago, I remember sitting in an office of a marketing research agency and writing a little PowerPoint presentation with diagrams for somebody else. I wondered how I ended up there, and then I quit and survived. But this video isn't about my life after quitting, but about what I would have needed to hear before quitting. Every quit your work video tells you the same. Save money, have a backup plan, start a side hustle, and sure, those are all important. But not many people talk about the actual reason you are stuck and will be stuck in your next job. Because it's not about your bank account, it's about your brain account. And there are 3 traps or patterns that keep you chained to a job you hate. The psychological one, which was programmed into you before you were born. The biological one, which is physically changing your brain right now. And the third one, which is the sneakiest, because it feels like your personality, but it's actually the system. And I'm going to walk you through all 3 and then tell you what to do about it while you're still employed. So that when you do quit, you don't bring the same stuck, trapped version into whatever comes next. Trap number 1, and this is the most personal. Quick note regarding my situation when I quit. I lived in Germany. I had no pets, no kids, no car, and I eventually got unemployment benefits. Not a lot, but enough to pay the rent and get food. Those are, of course, way less dependencies than a 45-year-old father with 2 kids, a car, and a house with a mortgage has. I know that. But here's what's interesting. I know so many people in Germany with the same safety net as me, and maybe even savings, who are terrified to quit and choose to suffer in their job. Why? Because this fear of quitting has almost nothing to do with your actual situation, but with what you inherited and the meaning it has for you. I immigrated from Lithuania to Germany with my mother when I was 5. And I grew up hearing, we are so poor. My grandmother, who experienced the Second World War and was in a concentration camp, lived like she had nothing. She wore until the end clothes with holes in them. Everything she earned was saved, and she never spent anything on herself. Whereas my mother told me that she can't afford to give me pocket money, but she could afford to buy alcohol, cigarettes, and have manicures. Now, as an adult, I know that we weren't poor. But the fear of being poor was very real, and it was passed on to me. I lived so frugally, and I was proud of that. So when I told my mother and my grandmother that I quit my kind of stable marketing job, the one that I earned after my psychology masters and the best grades, they freaked out. Even worse than me. Because in their world, you don't leave a stable job. No matter how much you suffer, a job is your ticket out of poverty. You endure and you are grateful. And I inherited the survival instinct for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And you probably did too. Maybe not from immigration. Maybe your parents were poor. Or maybe they survived a recession. Or maybe you grew up in a house where talking about money was taboo, so you didn't learn anything about it. Whatever it was, your body and your brain learned job equals safety. Losing job equals danger. And that program is still running in you right now. But that fear isn't yours. It's from generations before you. It was in your family even before you were alive. So maybe the question isn't whether you can afford to quit, but rather, whose fear is actually stopping you? That was the first pattern, the one you were born into. And the second one is happening to you probably right now, and I can prove it. Because if you quit today without fixing your biology first, you are going to take the same paralyzed version of yourself into the next job. That is trap number 2, the biological lock. There is a study and follow-up studies from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. They recruited a sample of different people who had worked 60 to 70 hours per week for years. These people couldn't sleep. They had heart palpitations, body aches. They were exhausted but couldn't rest. Anxiety, memory problems, concentration problems that their employers even reported. And some of them said that they just didn't feel like themselves anymore. And the researchers put them into brain scanners and did structural MRI scans. And what they found was that their prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates emotions, that makes decisions, that thinks creatively, had physically shrunk. There was less gray matter in these areas, like literally less brain. But their amygdala, their fear center, has gotten bigger. And yes, they controlled for stress from other sources and trauma. So in other words, if you have been grinding for years in a stressful job, your brain has biologically gotten worse at planning your escape, while it got better at being afraid. Now, of course, these were extreme cases with 60 to 70 hours per week. But it's not like your brain has a switch where it says, okay, now I start deteriorating. It's a spectrum. So if you find yourself in any of these symptoms, the process might have already started. And that's not even the worst part, because additionally, your brain starts pruning, synaptic pruning. That means when you are in an environment where nothing challenges you, the same emails, the same meetings, the same PowerPoint presentations day in, day out, your brain goes, oh, okay, we don't need creativity or planning or curiosity anymore. Let's cut that off. We need to save energy. And it cuts those synaptic connections. Use it or lose it, literally. So now you are sitting in this office with a brain that can't think creatively, that can't make decisions, that can't plan and is in fear 24/7. And you are wondering why you just can't quit, why you're so anxious, or why you always end up choosing the wrong job and have to become a professional quitter. And what is so sad is that you don't notice it happening. That is what chronic stress does. You tell yourself, oh, it's just a busy project, it's a stressful period. But suddenly, this stressful period lasts 5 years. And the good news is that some of these changes are reversible. There is neuroplasticity. Your brain, your prefrontal cortex can recover, even in old age. But only if you actually get out and retrain your brain instead of finding another cage. That is the prerequisite for healthy aging. Okay, now the third trap, which is the hardest to see and most normalized in our society because it feels like you. When I worked at this agency, I saw my colleagues completely merge with the company. When the company had bad numbers, they panicked. What if we get fired? We have to work harder. We have to earn more, better clients, better projects, more. And I always sat there thinking, yo, chill. That's the founder's problem. That's the CEO's job. They get the salary to save the sinking ship. Why are you losing sleep over someone else's business? But in their mind, they were the company. The company's failure is their personal failure. And the company's success is their self-worth. And they needed to prove that they worked hard for the money. So they voluntarily stayed later and pushed through. And I always had my internal secret rule. This is my contract. these are my hours. I get paid to work from 9 to 5, so I work from 9 to 5. After a while, my motto was, how little can I do until someone notices? And when they notice, I work 5% more. In all honesty, I don't understand why everyone expects you to work more than you are paid for, and everyone just accepts that as the norm. And as you can guess, I was the black sheep of the company, at least among the consultants, and I was fine with it. And one day, in a feedback conversation with my team leader, Marty, your numbers are not great. They need to improve for you to become a senior consultant at this company. I never said that I want to become a senior. He didn't know what to do with that. In his world, everyone must want to have a promotion. That's probably why I preferred hanging out with the IT or data analysis guys, the ones working with numbers and not with fancy clients. So yeah, I resisted and protected my identity. And they called me unambitious. Maybe she has some concentration problems. They literally told me that. And that was okay. I knew what I was capable of. I knew that I worked at the Max Planck Institute before. I was offered to do a PhD at grad school. I can work hard and I can be focused and ambitious, but only when I choose to, dear company. I am not going to spend my life force making someone else money and stressing about their dreams come true. That has nothing to do with me. But I wasn't immune, even with the boundaries and the clarity, the system still got me. Therefore, there were nights where I worked until midnight, because on some days this quiet expectation was lingering in the sticky office air. This project must be done today, no matter how long it takes, even if the client won't look at the data at night. And those performance reviews were the worst, because I always thought I'm not the one planning these projects. I'm not the one setting the deadlines and the targets. But what they told me was, it is you who needs to do more. They make the company's problems about your identity, about your worth. So no wonder that the fear of being judged and being rejected kicks in, especially when you don't really know what good performance is compared to school or in a university where it's obvious how to get good grades. There is just this underhanded expectation of more. You are not enough. And that is the identity trap. The system doesn't just want your time. It wants that you believe that your worth is measured by your output, that you are this performance review, that a promotion means you matter, you are important. And most people buy into it. They tie their self-worth to their paycheck, to their boss's opinion. So when they suffered enough and think about quitting, they don't just leave a job. It feels like they're leaving themselves. So if you are not a black sheep and rebel, but if your worth is tied to your work, you must start the inner work before you quit. Let's do a short recap. You have the generational fear, you have a shrinking brain, and a self-worth measured by a paycheck. 3 trapping patterns. And most people try to quit while those 3 are still running. That is why they end up in the same sucky job as they were before. So now let me share 2 things that helped me before I quit. You know, most people dream of storming the boss's office and burning everything down and quitting out of frustration. Or they are quiet quitters and just rot until they are fired. Either way, they are running from something. And what worked for me was building something to run towards while I was still employed. Personally, I discovered positive psychology, which I didn't learn about in university, the science about what makes people thrive instead of what makes them sick. And it sparked something in me that working in market research and with corporate clients never did. I spent my holidays at conferences. I did a certificate. Everything kind of in secret. And when later on people at work asked what I was doing, I got cheeky. Oh, this new science of positive psychology, we could actually use that in our market research or for our company. Then they even paid for one conference. But really, it was just for me. And then I genuinely tried. To bring my passion into that company. I talked to my superiors about programs for mental health, for employee well-being. And they said, yeah, maybe a no. They didn't want the employees to feel better. They wanted them to produce better numbers, not understanding that those two are kind of linked. But the employees themselves, my colleagues, also didn't push back as long as the stress is kind of manageable and they get paid for it. Nobody wanted to rattle the cage. And for me, that was my moment. That was when I knew this company will never align with my interests and not with my values. And if you have such a small moment, please share it in the comments. I'm sure other people can relate so much. I'm getting goosebumps here. Please do. So if you are employed right now and you hate it, that's okay, because you can use that time and money. Yes, save money, but use the safety of this paycheck to explore, find courses, books, go to an event, find something that excites you. It can be just another company or a totally different field. Give your poor brain something to grow towards, because remember, your synapses are being pruned right now while you are rotting at that desk. And the second thing that you can do right now is maybe something that you don't want to hear. Therapy, psychotherapy. I would recommend everybody who has a childhood to do a psychotherapy. Because if I were to guess, I'd say you have some kind of savings or a safety net. You do value your health, your mental health, and you still don't leave that job. That means that there is a part of you that benefits from you slowly killing yourself and your brain at work. Otherwise, you wouldn't choose to stay. And with a professional, you can find these blind spots much faster than video, books, journaling. Because that's what a blind spot is. You don't see it. You were probably raised to be a high performer, a perfectionist. But through the inner work in therapy, or if you are really committed on your own, you will really feel that that is not you. Now, I know that therapy isn't equally available everywhere, but really, whether it is therapy, coaching, or one just really vulnerable and honest conversation with someone you trust, just do the internal work and look at what your self-worth is really tied to. Because if you quit with all this subconscious baggage, you will build the same prison somewhere else. And one final thing, I would love to shout from the rooftops, burn down the companies! Everybody quit your job! Do your own thing! And I truly believe so. But that is my path. Maybe your path is to find a company that values you, one that aligns with what is important to you. Or maybe it is to go freelance or to do something that doesn't even have a name yet. The point was never to quit your job. The point is to quit that version of you that is caged by fear, stress, and someone else's dreams. Yes, work sucks, but you don't suck. Thank you for listening for my message of the day. And if you want to, burn them down.